Hello, welcome to FightCore USA.
Hi, friends! A young fighter lands a beautiful haymaker that connects flush on his opponent's jaw. His opponent drops to the canvas like a sack of potatoes. But just as quickly as he went down, he bounces back up as if nothing happened. What in the world just happened? Was that legal? How did he get up so fast? And what does it mean for the rest of the fight? We'll break it all down right here on this channel. Now, anytime we see a fighter drop like this, there's always two potential explanations. The first one is that the punch was so powerful that it literally knocked the wind out of them. When fighters lose their mouthpiece or get a bad case of the hiccups after taking a punch, that's an example of this. In those cases, the air in their lungs gets abruptly displaced, causing them to lose their balance and hit the canvas. Now, sometimes this happens as a result of a glancing blow. Think back to the Ali Frazier fight. After a 12-round brawl, Frazier was badly hurt in the 15th when a right hand from Ali caught him at the side of the head. It was a knockout blow, but it did produce one of the most iconic images in sports history. The instant that Frazier dropped to the canvas, Muhammad Ali reached over and helped him up. The crowd at the Garden roared with approval. That's how close that one was to being a knockout. For more on that classic fight, check out our video on it. But back to our flash knockdown. The other explanation for a fighter dropping to the canvas and getting back up without any delay is called a flash knockdown. In order to understand what happens in these cases, we need to learn about a little something called the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system, or RAS, is a collection of neurons that extends from the brainstem to the thought. Its job is to filter incoming sensory information and determine which stimuli are important enough to actually pass along to the cortex. To make that determination, the rest looks for sudden increases in activity. And once it receives a signal from the brainstem that a new stimulus has arrived, the RAS will ask a series of questions. Is this stimulus meaningful? Is it important? Does it require my attention? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, then the stimulus moves on to the cortex, where it's perceived by the conscious mind. Think of the rest like the bouncer at the nightclub. Bouncers don't care whether you can dance or not. They only care about two things. Are you cool enough to get in? And do you cause problems? If the answer to both of those questions is yes, then you're in. Otherwise, you're out. No! When a hard punch lands on the head, it causes the brain to move back and forth inside the skull. This sudden movement creates a brief disruption in the electrical circuit in the form of an action potential. An action potential is like a spark plug in an engine. Without it, the car won't start. The action potential travels up the trigeminal nerve, which runs from the face to the brainstem. It is here that the RAS picks up the signal and determines whether or not it needs to be sent to the cortex. If it's strong enough, then the fighter goes down. It's the difference between being lightly jostled and going full knockout. If a punch were to land, that was even harder. The signal would travel all the way to the cortex before the fighter even hits the... At that point, it's too late. the fight is over. But what happens when the punch momentarily interrupts the circuit? Well, it depends. Sometimes the brain circuit gets reset automatically. Other times, the fighter needs a second to collect themselves. But either way, the outcome is the same. The fighter gets up and the fight continues. Now, if you've ever had your lights punched out, you know exactly what we're talking about. In those instances, the punch disrupts the brain's electrical activity and makes it very difficult to regain consciousness. But if the lights don't go out, but you feel dazed and confused for a second, that's a flash knockdown. Fighters can absorb a tremendous amount of punishment and still retain consciousness. The ability to do that is called having a great chin. Rocky Marciano was famous for his incredible chin. He never lost a professional fight and he absorbed some tremendous punishment along the way. Just us, Jersey Joe. Yeah, in their second encounter, Marciano sent Walcott to the canvas 4 times, but each time Walcott got back up. What made Marciano so tough? Some say it had to do with his heart, which weighed 16 ounces. Okay, maybe not that, but seriously, Marciano had a great chin. After being hit with a solid punch, he would shake it off and keep coming forward. He'd never back down from a fight, no matter how tough things got. And that's why he became one of boxing's all-time greats. Okay, so what happens to the fighter who shakes off a punch and stays on his feet? They get a standing ovation from the crowd and the referee restarts the action. Sometimes the fighter who absorbs the punch is even able to turn the tables and punish their opponent for letting their guard down. But here's the thing, even though the fighter is able to get back up and continue fighting, they still take the knockdown. In the world of professional boxing, it doesn't matter whether or not a fighter is dazed or confused when they hit the canvas. All that matters is that they hit the canvas. Now, there are different ways to score. In amateur boxing, any punch can result in a knockdown, provided that it sends the fighter off balance and forces them to touch the canvas with any part of their body besides their feet. In professional boxing, a knockdown is scored whenever a fighter is sent to the canvas by a punch from their opponent and remains there for a 5-second count. Most professional sanctioning bodies require that the punch that results in a knockdown must come from above, meaning that it needs to originate from the hands or elbows. Low blows are not permitted to score. In most combat sports, a flash knockdown is worth 1 point for the attacker, regardless of whether or not the defender is momentarily stunned. This rule is in place to prevent fighters from taking unnecessary risks. After all, a fighter who is dazed or confused is much easier to finish off than one who, alert and on their game. But if the fighter is still conscious, then the fight continues. Oftentimes the crowd will boo when a fighter gets up after a flash knockdown because they think that they should be finished. But technically, the fight isn't over until the referee calls it. But the fighter who absorbed the punch may have their hands full trying to fend off a flurry of follow-up attacks. After all, a fighter who wobbles from a solid punch is a sitting duck for a few seconds. So, if the attack comes in waves, the dazed fighter could find themselves in serious trouble. Now, Oftentimes fighters will hold on to their opponent after they get back up to prevent this very thing from happening. But there's nothing in the rules against attacking a fighter while they're holding on to you. So the fighter who absorbed the flash knockdown has to be extremely careful. And unfortunately, many fighters have paid the price for failing to keep their wits about them. Just ask Michael Grant. In the year 2000, Grant was one of heavyweight boxing's rising stars. He was undefeated with 42 wins and 38 of them by knockout. In his next fight, a scheduled 12-rounder against veteran Larry Donald, Grant found himself in deep water early in the third round. Donald decked Grant with a right hook. Grant stumbled but stayed on his feet. Just 19 seconds later, Donald sent Grant down again. This time he stayed on his feet and the referee allowed the fight to continue. Perhaps he thought that Grant was dazed from the punch. But whatever the reason, Donald followed up with a barrage of punches and ended the fight with a vicious knockout. Incongruency on the ability to shake off a punch and stay on your feet is an invaluable skill in combat sports. Even if it doesn't save you from taking the knockdown, it does show incredible toughness. Having a great chin is something that can't really be taught. It's just something that fighters either have or they don't. And the fighters who do have it are always exciting to watch. Now, it's time to turn things over to you. Which fighter that you've seen over the years had the best chin? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching.
Okay guys, thank you for watching my videos.